Mainstream Mental Health Radio with Dr. John Huber.
What do you think you are, crazy or something? Well, you're not.
We're on a mission from God.
News, issues revolving around mental health. Dr. John Huber, a mental health professional for over 20 years, the chairman for Mainstream Mental Health, a clinical forensic psychologist, and a psychology professor at Texas State University. Breaking the silence of mental health, one day at a time, discussing the human condition, providing a sounding board for mental health issues, and making mental health mainstream.
You got a gift, my friend.
Now it's time for Mainstream Mental Health Radio.
Let the healing begin.
With Dr. John Huber.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Mainstream Mental Health Radio Show. I'm your host, Dr. John Huber. Thank you very much for listening. We really do appreciate it. We have another fantastic show for you today. Remember to check out our website at mainstreammentalhealth.org. And please let your friends know about the show. You can also listen to our podcast on iTunes at Blog Talk Radio, Mainstream Mental Health. And, you know, it's been an exciting week. We've come off 2 hurricanes, and this past weekend we had an amazing fundraiser for Mainstream Mental Health Radio Show. Texas's funniest news reporter. And man, they outdid themselves. It was an amazing experience. And for those of you who couldn't make it, I'm sorry. You need to try and make it. We actually sold out and had to turn people away before the show started. And we had it was just an amazing event, totally. So, you know, if you weren't able to make it and you want to try and help us out some, I'd recommend going to our website, Mainstream Mental Health. And whenever you are shopping on Amazon, just go to Mainstream Mental Health and click on our link, or go to Amazon Smile and look for Mainstream Mental Health. And that way we can get a donation from Amazon for every purchase you make. It's a real simple way to do that. All right. Dealing with all the hurricane events and everything else, it's been hard for us in the medical arena, whether you're mental health or not. We've had a lot of issues with our patients and being able to get care for them, being able to get certain medical supplies because of transportation issues, because they're going to recovery for the hurricanes and stuff. But one of the things people don't often realize, we understand the struggle for taking care of humans, our human friends, our mothers and fathers and uncles and aunts and grandparents and children. But the fact that we take care of our kids and then we take care of our pets much like we do our kids, it actually can increase our levels of anxiety and depression. It can be very difficult, a heavy burden for us to take care of. And one of the biggest problems, much like little children, that's why I keep going back to kids, is they can't always tell you. Actually, animals typically can't tell you what hurts, what feels bad, what's going on with them. And that creates a very emotionally laden situation where we have a lot of issues associated with that. And like I said before, we know when we're looking after seriously ill humans that it's very stressful, and that increases risk of anxiety and depression for the caregiver. The same is true for caregiver of especially terminally ill pets. And caring for someone is usually stressful, whether you're a healthcare practitioner or a relative, partner, or friend. So this type of actual stress has a technical name. It's actually medically classified as caregiver burden, and it can expose the caretaker or caregiver to depression, actually social isolation, and then that in effect affects overall quality of life, and you're then at risk for worse physical expectations as well, sickness and illness on your own. This caretaker or caregiver burden has been studied multiple times in human beings. However, it's rarely, if ever, been addressed when it comes to taking care of your pet owners or veterinarians. Now, my wife and I, we had a cat, actually 2 of them, that were struggling. One of them ended up with diabetes, and we struggled with that cat for a long time. until it finally succumbed to the diabetes. And that was very stressful and sad. And the cat had been in my wife's family for, approaching 20 years. And the second cat was, survived another 4 or 5 years after that one. But there was so much stress and started having kidney failure and liver problems. And it created a very, very tenuous situation. You feel sorry and sad for the cat. You didn't want to leave it, but you had to go to work. And, studying that is actually, I think, a smart thing to do, because so many of us love our pets so much. We basically work for and take care of our pets. And they give us unconditional love, unconditional rewards. And they're just amazing things to have. And they give us so much pleasure and actually increase mental and physical health because of that companionship that they provide that is so unconditional. So when they are at their end of life and struggling, it makes a lot of sense. So that being said, many pet owners think of their animal companions as actually legitimate family owners. And previous studies have actually shown that veterinarians are exposed to the same high-level stress as healthcare professionals that deal with humans as well. So dealing with humans that are dealing with dementia, one of the things that we see are a lot of behavioral issues. These behavioral issues manifest themselves sometimes as depression, and we have to struggle with, as healthcare professionals, how much of the depression is directly related to the dementia, and are we better off treating the dementia or the depression or both of them at the same time, and which one takes priority over that? And News Medical Net has been looking at a study that investigates this depression treatment among individuals with dementia, and it's being run out of the University of Arizona College of Pharmacy and the Banner Alzheimer's Unit to investigate how this depression treatment progresses among the population. The article indicates that the objective of the study is to provide real-world evidence for healthcare providers, patients, and caregivers to make informed decisions about treating depression along with dementia. Now, this has been a difficult thing. In the hospitals I work with, we have individuals who come in and they're suffering from dementia, and they're very sad. A lot of them are sad because they are in early stages of dementia, and they know that dementia is wasting away their brain and their life, and they are so worried and concerned with what's happening. And a lot of those individuals are asking for the help, and that's relatively easy to provide when they're in that point. But when they get into the later stages of dementia, it becomes very problematic and very difficult, because then you may be fighting different family members who want certain treatments and other families don't want treatments, and having actual research behind this for us to go in and make a decision with the family is going to be significant. The study extends through July of 2019, so we got another 2 years to go before the data collection is finished, and then we are waiting with bated breath to see the results. Behavioral problems are a leading cause of healthcare expenditures, nursing home placement, caregiver burden involved with patients with dementia, and getting appropriate treatment for that depression among patients diagnosed with dementia can significantly reduce health-related costs while improving the quality of life for these individuals. And for those of us who are out there working with this population, this is a study that's needed to be done for a long time. So I'm glad to see that. Glad to see that. An interesting thing, Siri, the app on iPhones and tablets, are actually being used by many people as therapists. So Apple is actually now actively seeking engineers who have an understanding of psychology. This was an interesting story to read. Perhaps you've stumped Siri before, asking Apple's automated assistant things like, what is the meaning of life, and how can I be healthier and happier? You're not the only one who's doing this and turning your phone into an existential guru. And the reality of it is a lot of these people are actually, not just in jest, they're looking for some guidance and in all seriousness, practical life advice. So according to an Apple job posting, lots of people do it, and that's why the company now is seeking software engineers with feeling and a background of psychology and hopefully peer counseling to help improve Siri's response to these tougher and some of life's toughest questions. So people talk to Siri about all kinds of things, including when they're having a stressful day or have something serious on their mind. They turn to Siri in emergencies or when they want guidance on living a healthier life. This comes from an April ad for a Siri software engineer in health and wellness in Santa Clara, California. And I think it's amazing that they're identifying this. We've joked about it in mental health care for a long time. That I don't need a therapist right now. I've got Siri, and we're talking. But the reality of it is, these individuals are turning to Siri in oftentimes emergencies or when they really need some real guidance in life. So I'm glad to see they're looking for that. It'll be interesting to see how it works out and how they move forward with that Siri module. All right, well, going back to the hurricanes one more time, what is the thing that we should offer survivors of devastating hurricanes, according to psychology? And came across an article written by a PhD student who is working on his doctorate. His name is Matthew Jones, and I think he's directly hit the nail on the head. Many of the people I've talked with over the last few weeks dealing with hurricane issues, and one of the things that Matthew Jones is talking about, and I agree with, is that this ideal of resilience, an ability to come back and continue fighting, that is probably the most needed single thing to overcoming not just hurricanes, but any kind of devastating blow, whether it's the earthquake we just had in Mexico City, which is, we're out there praying for those people right now. It's such a sad situation. But we often get asked, how do people overcome this? How do we overcome this, bounce back and move on and get on with our life? And psychology repeatedly shows over and over and over, it's that key thing called resilience. Now, resilience is actually, if we look at depression, resilience is the opposite of depression. It's that ability to keep fighting and moving forward. And when we get depressed, we oftentimes lose that ability to move forward. We lose the ability to fight, and we basically get hung up and stuck in this self-pity kind of mode, and we turn things off and we stop thinking rationally. And as we do that, it becomes rather a self-defeating process. And as a therapist, we often move forward with, you get it, you got it. We're going to try and teach you how to be resilient. We're going to try and teach you to change your mindset, how you think and process information. I want to remind everybody at this time that you are listening to Mainstream Mental Health Radio. I am your host, Dr. John Huber. And one more quick study. Several years ago, we had a major kidnapping, and the person who was kidnapped was Elizabeth Smart. She was 14 years old. She was raped, and a recent report that's come out, she reveals that she considered suicide after she was raped. She said she wanted to kill herself. She said she is Mormonism's most high-profile sexual assault survivor, and she believed that her kidnapper had robbed her of her virtue, her virginity, and thus she had become worthless. She stated that for me, because I grew up in a very conservative Christian neighborhood, the first time I was raped, I remember feeling devastated. Reveals Smart, now 29 years old, and a special correspondent for Crime Watch Daily with Chris Hansen in an interview to be aired Tuesday. She stated, I felt like it would be better to be dead than to continue living being a rape victim, being a rape survivor. She said, I felt in that moment if there had been any easy way out, I probably would have taken it. In the show coming up on Tuesday, Smart talks about her 9 months in captivity and with fellow sexual assault survivor and victim advocate Daisy Coleman. She was abducted from her Salt Lake City bedroom on June 5th, 2002 by former Mormon religious fanatic and would-be polygamist Brian David Mitchell and his wife Wanda Barzy. Mitchell raped Smart daily and kept her captive until she was found walking with the couple on March 12, 2003. So almost a full year later. And I know that definitely affected a lot of activities around the country. And at that time, I was working actively as a school psychologist and transitioning into clinical psychology, and it was all the buzz. We were all working on how do we protect our young girls across the country, period, from something like that happening. All right, again, one more time, we are Mainstream Mental Health Radio. I'm Dr. John Huber.
Our guest today is the author of Secret Life of Fathers, An Unexpected Guide to Understanding Men and Fathers. James L. Bond has written for Forbes and appears as a frequent radio talk show guest. He has done lots of research over the years. He's looked at interactions between fathers and their daughters. He has also written and looked at people from Donald Trump to Barack Obama, Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King Jr., Mark Twain, Paul McCartney, and even Supreme Court justices, looking at their CEOs of major corporations and how the influence of the daughters on their fathers is often more profound than people realize. Thank you for being on the show today, Mr. Bond, and welcome. I'm glad to have you on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Now, looking through here, you have a son and 3 daughters, and how have your daughters affected you and had a profound effect on your life? Let's just start with you.
Let me count the ways. Well, for 13 years, I ran a behavioral management firm, working with some of the largest organizations in the world. Then I discovered that my own relationship with my middle daughter wasn't as great as I thought. And so I wondered if I was the only father of daughters that was this clueless about his relationship with his daughter. Mm-hmm. So I started interviewing fathers of daughters, and I didn't know I was going to write a book or what it was going to evolve into. I was just trying to figure out how to be a better dad.
Right.
But because of my behavioral management background, I ended up asking questions that were so deep that I ended up getting dads talking about stuff that we normally don't talk about, guys, talking about guy stuff and relationships. The two don't mix very well. And to kind of show you, and it ended up being more profound than I ever thought for myself, but also for people that heard the interviews. And they, people told me, you're crazy, you got to share this. And so this ended up becoming, going into the book, The Secret Life of Fathers, where you feel like you're eavesdropping on men when no woman's in the room talking about relationships and their relationship with their daughter. To show you how clueless I am as a father of daughters, so my wife asked, so if you really wanted a better relationship with your daughter, shouldn't you have interviewed your daughter? So what could I say?
Been there, done that.
Yeah. But it just, I never thought the relationship with my daughters is so profound. One of the things I discovered from all the work that we've done, I I've been in behavioral management for most of my life, about 40 years, and looking at it from the perspective of father-daughter, the relationship with my son is easy. I had a son first and then 3 daughters, and so I got the baseball and the hockey and all that stuff out of the way, and had a great time with my son. When I talk to my son, it's his name's Jordan. Hey, Jordan, how's it going? Oh, not too bad. Anything doing? Not too much. Okay, great. Hey, I had a great conversation with Jordan just now.
Right.
With my daughters, it's like, TMI, too much information. It's like they're going to tell me their sex life and this and that. And how about your relationships? And, how do you feel and all that stuff? And I learned through my own experience, but I learned through the interviews I had with these guys a lot about myself and a lot about the difficulties that we have and the challenges interacting with our daughters and with women. And one of the things I didn't know was men are brain damaged at birth. And no, it's true. Before you laugh.
Okay.
So there's the left brain and the right brain, and it's connected by the corpus callosum, which is connective tissue that, And in the womb, guys get a rush of testosterone, and testosterone eats away, it dissolves a huge part of the corpus callosum. Right. Now, the theory is, it separates the left brain, which is speech predominantly, problem solving, from the right brain, which is emotion. I mean, obviously there's overlap.
Right.
And so what happens is, the theory is, the reason the corpus callosum gets dissolved, or much of it gets dissolved, is so that, back in the olden days when we're hunting saber-toothed tigers, we're not going to get so overwhelmed with emotion that we can't do what we have to do, that we can turn off emotion so we can do the tough things. The problem is we go into relationships and we turn off emotion too. In fact, it's hard for us to connect the emotion side with speech. So we feel.
I think we're also at a disadvantage because most, for example, American boys, they start off with balls and trucks and toy cars, or girls get their stuffed animals, and before they can talk, they're doing the nonverbal language between the stuffed animals, and we're going around making grunting noise with the trucks.
Well, that's right. And so, but what happens is, so our relationship with women, so there are 2 ways a guy screws up a relationship with a woman. He talks or he doesn't talk, right?
Exactly.
So, but with a baby, with a daughter, we don't have to worry about that because it's nonverbal to start with. When I'm holding my oldest daughter when she's an infant, and she's in her 30s now, but I'm holding my oldest daughter when she's an infant, and I said, "Oh, you're so beautiful, but you look just like Winston Churchill." And my wife says, "Don't say that." And I said, "She knows I love her. She doesn't, I don't have to worry about the words. I don't have to worry about political correctness. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I can just be." And so one of the things that happens, there's a study recently, it was released about a month ago from Emory University, and it said that it studied fathers of daughters and fathers of sons. And it said they discovered that right from the start, literally straight out of the chute, our relationship with our daughters, how we interact with our daughters, is totally different from how we interact with our sons. It's much more emotional. With kids, it's like we do roughhousing and everything else. Even from a young age, we talk about those competitive words. The words we use are words like, beat, best, win, super, top, hey, let's go, Rocky, da 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 da. With our daughters, it's totally different. It's, we talk about emotional words, cry, tears, lonely, hey, baby, And one of the things they found is that weirdly, not so weirdly when you are a dad of daughters, guys sing to their daughters, So here's, let me tell you a story.
Okay.
And tell me who you think the person is, okay? This is a daughter talking. So Daddy he would roll on the floor with us, okay? And then Mommy would call out from the other room, "Stop, you're going to break something." So he'd go, "Shh." And we'd wait until Mommy went away. And then as soon as Mommy went away, we'd go back to rolling on the floor. And I remember he took me on a roller coaster. And we put our hands up in the air and we were screaming, "Yeah!" It was fantastic. Who am I talking about? How about Martin Luther King Jr.?
Wow.
That's Yolanda, his daughter Yolanda, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't know, we don't understand the three-dimensionality of men. When we have a daughter, our daughter takes over a massive part of our life. There's a study, a major Harvard study, I think Harvard and University of Massachusetts or Michigan, one of the two, that they looked at Supreme Court justices, and they discovered that a guy who's on a Supreme Court who has a daughter suddenly changes the way he votes. In fact, Roe versus Wade, the deciding vote in Roe versus Wade was Harry Blackmun. Harry Blackmun was appointed by Richard Nixon. He was a staunch Republican. His daughter, in her early 20s, got pregnant without being married or, premarital, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she struggled with whether she wanted a divorce. Sorry, not a divorce. She struggled whether she wanted an abortion. She ended up not having the abortion, and she ended up marrying the guy. A few years later, up came the issue of Roe versus Wade, of women and abortions on the Supreme Court, and she had intense debates with her dad. And she said her dad used to sit with her. He used to come bring the issues that he was grappling with on the Supreme Court home and debate it with her and with the other family members, but with her particularly because she's the oldest daughter, and the way she would interact with him was different from everybody else. And he made the decision, became the deciding vote, saying yes on Roe versus Wade because of his relationship with his daughter.
Wow.
Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, his daughter Susie, when she became late teens, early 20s, was mad because her dad was known as a humorist, and she knew that he was a fabulous author. He had it in him also.
Right.
And she pushed him to do serious writing. He wrote the greatest works that he'd ever done. Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, all that stuff was written because of his daughter pushing him, and then she edited his work. She sent him back to the drawing board when she thought it wasn't good enough, and all his greatest works happened because of his daughter. In fact, when she died, he stopped writing.
Wow.
And so the connection between a father and a daughter is so profound, and I'm just talking about the father side, even the daughter side. I mean, it's scary, right. The relation, how, the stuff we did when we were, young fathers, and how it carries forward all the way through the woman's life. I mean, it's profound and scary at the same time.
Well, James, and I've got anecdotal stories I could tell you about my relationship with my 12-year-old daughter. In fact, I was up on stage doing a comedy routine this weekend, and my daughter's like, "You've got to do this. You got to tell this story. You got to, and I hadn't planned on going there. And so the next time I walked up there, all of a sudden I'm telling a story. And I'm like, why did that wasn't in my, my notes. That wasn't what I was planning on doing. But what are some of the essential characteristics of a healthy father and daughter relationship for my listeners, for the people that are sitting out there who aren't writing novels and telling jokes and things like that?
Okay. Who aren't writing, telling jokes? Yeah, I guess I'm listening to some pretty good jokes for your daughter. All right. So, the first one is many of the daughters remember doing something just her and her dad, okay? But a lot of dads tend to do family things with the whole family together, mom and dad, and if they're multiple kids, and not individually with a daughter. The time alone with a daughter is it's tremendously valuable early on. But there's another thing. You're a therapist. So I've been a behavioral management expert or specialist for most of my life. I'm used to giving advice.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, really. Well, we are. We're wired that way. We're great at problem solving.
Right.
And so we'll listen. Wait, you don't have to say anymore. I got it. Here's the answer. And the problem is, so with my middle daughter, Lauren, I realized we're sitting at dinner with the whole family. We're at a restaurant. And she's telling about a problem she had and then how she resolved it. And so I started giving her some advice, and she got all upset and insulted, and she got up and she left. And everyone said, wow, Lauren was rude. Why'd she do that? But I went, I know something just happened. What just happened? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized my whole life was about giving her advice. I never sat down and what she wanted was, she had this experience, she wanted me to hug her and say, you are so smart, I knew, I love you, and just hug her.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, what I did was I basically told her, you're stupid. Let smart daddy tell you what, how you should live your life, what you should do. And I never realized that by only giving her advice, having that a key part of my relationship with her, I was basically reducing her self-confidence instead of increasing it.
Right.
And suddenly, as I thought back with her particularly, because she was the quiet one, is that, I wanted to show her I love her, but I was doing the opposite. I had, with a lot of the dads, I was surprised how many dads said this, that they wanted a better relationship with their daughter, which I wanted. They wanted a better relationship with their daughter, but they didn't know how. And so a lot of dads said, the more I tried, the more I seemed to push her away instead of bring her closer.
Mm-hmm.
And what daughters need more than anything else, and not every single daughter, there's no absolutes in this, but in most of the time, they need us to listen and to shut up. I have this one guy who was saying how he comes home and, he sits down with his daughter, and he sits for 20 minutes and doesn't say anything except, oh, really? Tell me your day. What else? Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, and as much as he wants to tell her, oh, well, I'll tell you how to fix that, he doesn't. He just
listen.
has her talk and tell what's going on. And as a result of that, he said, it took him a while, he said, to learn this, but when he did this, he has a fantastic relationship. And so I tried it with my daughter first, with Lauren particularly. And it's funny because I was, biting my lip. I was not going to give advice. I was just going, oh, that's so interesting. And it takes a lot of self-control.
It does.
For some of us, tremendously. But she said after, oh, I loved our conversation. And she was talking to my wife, and she said, we had such a great conversation, Dad. I mean, it's like one of the best conversations we ever had. And I didn't say anything.
Right.
But it's what she needed.
They just want to be heard, just like everybody else. And It's amazing. I'm sitting here reflecting back on different things, and those are some of the best times. I mean, we do things as a family, but I also, with both my children, do individual things with them. For example, opening day of deer season, my daughter was out there with me at 3:00 in the morning, trudging through the forest. Because my son's like, but I want to, and I go, and my daughter's like, no, let's go, let's do this thing. So my son went a couple days later with me, but my daughter, she went out day one, and, it was amazing, listening, because, I keep my mouth shut when I'm out there, and she's got, hey, Daddy's quiet, I can talk. And man, the things I found out about her, and it really wasn't about, going after the deer, it was being with my daughter. And then I reflected back on, she wants all these pets, hamsters, gerbils, mice, all this kind of stuff. And I kept telling her, no. And she goes, well, why not? And I go, well, I'm worried about your level of responsibility in taking care of this animal. And she goes, well, how can I prove that I can do this? And I go, well, you keep looking at all these cages and you want me to buy this. Why don't you build a cage? And she built a cage, and now every time she wants an animal, she builds these really nice cages for them. And her whole room, is just stuffed full of pets. And she takes care of them. And, oh, my gosh, just this week, ants were crawling around on the floor. And you want to talk about panic. My pets, we got to get rid of all these ants. I go, look, in wild, they don't, they're not afraid of those. They deal with scorpions and spiders and ants all the time. But you don't understand. I'm like, okay, tell me what you need me to do. And you're right. Being able to stop and listen to, your child, especially your daughter, because we want to protect them. I mean, she's almost a black belt, and I've told her she can't date till she gets the black belt, And she's like, but why? That's not me. I don't want to beat up people. I go, I don't want you to either, but if you need to, I want you to be able to.
Right. Fabulous.
And she doesn't get it because she's 12,
Right. I had a 9/11 fireman, one of the guys that we interviewed.
Uh-huh.
And his daughter was about the same age, 11 or 12. And he said, so I was a dog. That's how he described himself. I was this guy who was really cool and buff, and I was a fireman and all that.
Uh-huh.
And so I dated like multiple girls at the same time and all that stuff. And now I've got a daughter. And she's at that age where she's 11, 12 years old. She's just starting to think of boys. How do I warn her against guys like me? I mean, and he was terrified.
That's right.
It's funny. I was so one of the questions I ask is, so her first day of school, what was that like? And I mean it, or I intended it for her. What was it like for her, from your perception?
Right.
But as a fireman, he's 3 days on, 4 days off, so he's a stay-at-home dad for a lot of the years and a time with his daughter. And so I said, so your daughter's first day of school, what was that like? He said, oh, it's terrible. I came home to an empty house. He said, how do you discipline a daughter? So he says, explain this to me, okay? He said, so I bring laundry into the room because I want her to fold it up. I did the laundry, and I have it in a basket. And so she takes the basket, and she turns it upside down, and she dumps it on the floor and hands me back the basket. And it's like, no, don't do that. But how do I scold her? She's got pictures all over her room of hearts with Daddy and her inside the heart. How do you scold a daughter? How do you scold a daughter like that? What do you do? It's like they're kryptonite. Don't you understand? We're Supermen and they're kryptonite, and we're, what do we do? That's my youngest daughter, and she got a chance to go to the Middle East recently, and I have a sort of a rocky relationship with her. She's a millennial. It's tough. My wife said, when she was 22, she said, I said, I struggled with my relationship with Erin. And she said, well, text her. I said, but she's just over there. I said, text her. So I'm texting her, and she's telling me her whole life story. And so I broke the invisible wall, and I said, Erin, that's really fantastic. She said, Dad, I just don't want to talk. Oh, okay, fine. So I go back to texting, and she's telling me her life story. I mean, it's tough, particularly with millennials. But so she went, and she was in the Middle East, and she called scared. They were sort of in a war zone and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I got to talk to her, and it was the greatest moment, one of the greatest moments of my life, because I got to be, the knight in shining armor. It's like, you can do this, don't worry. I was giving her confidence and helping her and helping her feel good about herself, and you're doing this heroic thing, which is wonderful. And she said those magic words, "Thank you, Daddy."
Yeah.
It's like I did soccer with my daughters, and and boy, I've got stories from that. But so it's funny, on a soccer field, a little girl says "Daddy," and half the men turn their heads.
That's right.
Like it's just magic. In fact, I remember the moment where I realized daughters are different than sons, because I had my son first, then my daughters. I had a soccer team with two of my daughters, and so they wanted to at practice session they wanted to scrimmage with the boys. Because girls want to play the boys, and they want to whoop their butts, And so they said, can we play with the boys? And I said, well, okay, hang on a second. You guys, I'll go over and talk to the other coach and find out if we can. But you guys have to do some warm-up first. And they said, okay, fine, we're okay with that. So we did the warm-up, and I said, okay, so you're ready? We're going to play with the boys now. Okay, great. So let's go. So I'm walking across the field, and I realized they're not with me. I turn around and look, and they're putting makeup on.
Right.
That's the moment where I realized this is not boys. It's also terrifying once they reach that age, the scariest.
Oh, it's very terrifying.
Yeah, the terrifying time is when they get their driver's license. almost universally. And the reason is because suddenly we don't know where they are.
Right.
They can, take the car and, we don't know where they are. They're independent.
Be out of state in 5 minutes. Yes, I understand.
Right.
Totally.
You get a call, hi, this is Officer so-and-so. Chris Rock has a great line. He says, I believe he has daughters, and he said, the father's job is to keep your daughter off the pole, meaning the stripper's pole.
or to get the right percentage in, commission. That's the thing.
Okay, right. Why this? So I got dads to talk about, there were 2-hour interviews, recorded interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And I got dads to talk about stuff that they don't normally talk about. And so I got a call from this lady and she said, I'm trying to track down the Father-Daughter Project, and my husband died a year ago.
Wow.
And I know he did an interview, a recorded interview, and we would give the guys the interview, the recording, but they wouldn't always share it, okay?
Right.
And she says, my husband died about a year ago, and I'm just trying to track this thing down about, do you have a recording of the interview you did or whatever? And so yes, I did. And I sent it to her. And so his daughter, talking about the stripper's pole, became a stripper.
Uh-huh.
And so he talked, I listened to the interview and I thought, wow, this is going to be pretty heavy for her. And he talks about his relationship with her, because I always started with your relationship with your mom, and then, your spouse or better half, how you met them and all that stuff and what was important for you, and then coming to the daughter. So we sort of have a frame of reference, a perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how much guilt he had, that he felt that, his daughter had become a stripper. He loves her so much, and he feels like, he let her down somehow, and talked about the guilt in that. And it was really pretty a deep thing. So I sent her the recording, a link to the recording, and I didn't hear from her, so I called her about a week later, and I said, I just want to make sure that you got the recording. And she said, oh, let me tell you, he's dead for over a year. It was like he was alive and visiting me. You got him to say stuff about our relationship and about our daughter and about his mom. I never knew this. I never knew this. It was just really, it was so, it was, so she said I couldn't let you know anything, because after I listened to it, I was stunned. So I said, I'm sorry. She said, no, it was great. It was amazing. But it was really powerful.
Wow.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, we're starting to run up to some time, so,
okay.
So we're starting.
Okay. But just the whole issue is women are profoundly affected. Daughters are profoundly affected by their dads, and it's just, that side of it is pretty amazing.
It is, and so let's hear your story, and then I have a couple of quick questions for you. Then we need to wrap it up there. So
okay, and it's just as a reminder that so when you went on that outing with your daughter, when she's in her 60s, she's going to remember it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Maggie is a copywriter in Santa Barbara who read the book, the first version of it. This is the second version now, the second edition. And she told me that she's from Ireland, and her dad, she suddenly remembered as she was reading some of this about some of the dads who were struggling to try to have a better relationship with their daughters, that her dad came in from drinking with the boys, which is what they did in Ireland back then.
Right.
And she could smell the booze on him, and he came up to her and said, can I help you with your homework? And she said, no. And she just almost humiliated her dad, and he turned and he walked out. He didn't walk out forever, but he walked out there.
Right.
And she suddenly realized, I bet my dad was trying to show me he loves me in the only way he knew how, and I humiliated him. And from that moment and other moments I could suddenly think of also, my dad actually was reaching out to me several times in my life to just connect with me, and I scared him and humiliated him. And all my life, she says, I'm in my 60s. I've never had a close relationship with a man because I always thought of men as cold fish, just like my dad, and I think I got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, she said my dad's died about a decade ago now, and I feel really bad because I would love to talk with him about this. and connect, because I know he was reaching out to me, and I know I just kept pushing him away, and I thought it was him that's the problem, when I didn't realize that I just made it so hard for him. And I think that, to me, is the biggest, most profound piece that I've gotten out of this whole thing, is that it's amazing how many dads want a closer relationship with their daughters, but they don't know how.
And I think that's true, and with a lot of relationships, but especially with their daughters. Oh,
it's till death do us part, even more than everything else. I mean, you could divorce. You can't divorce from a child. I mean, she's your child. I remember one of your interviews was Michael Jackson's daughter. I mean, she's Michael Jackson's daughter till the end of time.
Well, Dr. Bond, there is. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I think you have a lot of insight, and you've been able to observe. That's what we do, but you actually document it and put it down for the rest of us. Where can my listeners, get a copy of your book and maybe find out more about you and all that?
Sure. Well, the book is called The Secret Life of Fathers. I challenge you to read this and not change your understanding of what men are really like, and starting with your father, okay? And probably the best place to go is the website, the Father-Daughter Project. We've got some free stuff that people can download. We've got 7 questions every woman needs to ask her father, which is really a fun little exercise. But it's the Father-Daughter Project is probably the best place.
Awesome. And they can get, if they have questions or anything, there's a place where they can email you and that kind of stuff, or post a question.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on our show today, and that basically concludes our interview today. We have had an amazing conversation with James L. Bond today and the Father-Daughter Project. So I want to remind everybody that we're here weekly. Come back and listen to our show here in the future, and tell everybody about our show. So thank you very much for being on the show and listening. And remember, life is what happens while you're making plans. So buckle up.
Thanks for listening to Mainstream Mental Health Radio with your host, Dr. John Huber. Check us out on social media, Google+, Mainstream Mental Health, Instagram @Mainstream Mental Health, Twitter @Mainstream MENTL, and search for Mainstream Mental Health on Facebook. Please tune in every week to Mainstream Mental Health Radio with your host, Dr. John Huber.